Good morning. I'm Barry Bryson, and I thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're continuing our study of the minor prophets by beginning today a study of the prophet Haggai. Haggai is a post-exilic prophet. He is writing early on in the time period after the returnees have come back from Babylonian captivity and are rebuilding the city of Jerusalem. They're still part of the Persian Empire, but they're going to have a governor appointed by the Persian emperor, and they're going to be able, with the full consent of the Persian Empire, they're going to be able to rebuild the city of Jerusalem and re-inhabit their homelands, which is something that the Persians did. Once they defeated the Babylonian Empire, they did not just for the Jews, but for other conquered peoples. Remember that the Assyrians, when they conquered a people, they scattered them. So there was no way for a bulk of a population to return to the homeland. The Babylonians took people captive, but then integrated them into their own society and took the best and brightest among them, like a Daniel, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and put them into government service, giving them training, and tried to build one culture that way while respecting, the conquered people's religion, which we read about in the book of Daniel. But what the Persians did, with Cyrus and Darius and the others who followed, they allowed indigenous peoples, or conquered peoples, I should say, to go back to their homeland, to go to their indigenous habitations, if they so chose. And many did, and many Jews did. In the first two waves of Jewish returnees, there were probably 50,000, more than 40,000 that came back with Nehemiah, and then Ezra after that brought another 5,000 to 10,000 people. So around 50,000 in that first group of original pioneers that rebuilt the city of Jerusalem. Haggai is among them. Haggai is interesting in that we know nothing about him anywhere else in Scripture, and it's amazing that he's not mentioned in either Ezra or Nehemiah. Well, I mentioned Nehemiah earlier. I meant Zerubbabel. When Zerubbabel brought the people back, Haggai came later with the rebuilding of the walls, and I misspoke. I'm sorry about that. But Haggai is not mentioned in the book of Ezra at all, and that's unusual that Haggai is not mentioned at all, because he seems to have played such a pivotal role in speaking for God to Zerubbabel, who is a descendant of David and a forefather of Jesus, and is the first governor of this Persian province of Jerusalem. And then Joshua, who is the high priest, whose name is also interesting because Joshua is Jesus' name. And so Joshua and Zerubbabel are both spoken to directly in Haggai's prophecy. Haggai is not only a guy that we don't know anything else about, we don't even know what his name means, but he plays his pivotal role in getting the people to do something they need to do, which is finish building the temple, which they were slow in doing. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. The foundation of the temple was laid, and that's described in the book of Ezra. But what's happened in the book of Haggai is that people have started the building of the temple, but they have not finished the building of the temple. And God is telling them, hey, do this first before you make your homes luxurious. And that's what God says to them in the book of Haggai. We need to talk about the history of things for a bit, and we'll talk more tomorrow about the history of things as we take a second day to introduce the book of Haggai. In 586, the Babylonians destroyed the city of Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. So Haggai is writing, and he precisely dates his prophecy. He is writing 66 years later. He's writing in the year 520, and he's writing between the dates of August 29th and December the 18th during the year 520. So from late summer to early winter, he's making his prophecies. And so some people who are alive at this time are old enough, not many, but if you were, say, 70 years old, you were old enough to have a memory of what Solomon's temple and all of its glory looked like. And as we'll talk about this tomorrow, as we learn in the book of Ezra, those people are greatly disappointed because they remember what it used to be, and they know it's not going to be like that now, and maybe not for a long time, and maybe not ever, and that's upsetting to them. We're not exactly sure why, if that was the main reason, or maybe that was one reason, and the other reason is they're just trying to establish a city again. It takes them a long time to get the walls built. They have to rebuild their houses. They have to rebuild their economy. They're starting from less than nothing, because nothing means they have a tabula rasa and some resources around them. They're starting from rubble, from ruins, to try to rebuild something, and so they are slow in getting the temple rebuilt. Now they have with them, when they come back, all the things that are in the temple that were taken by the Babylonians. This to me is an amazing thing, because all those are detailed in the book of all this is detailed in the book of Ezra. The things that the Babylonians took, and all the items, all the implements, everything. It's cataloged, and they know where it is, and they can give it back to them 66 years later, and a second empire later. I don't know that our own federal government would have the ability 70 or so years later, after who knows how many administrations, to know exactly where in the warehouse something is and say, here it is, and here's the inventory list. But they did, and they carried all those things back. It's really an amazing thing. In 539, after Cyrus had conquered the Babylonians, he issued his decree allowing the Jews to go back to their homeland if they wanted to. Now, the Jews had thrived during Babylonian captivity, and we'll talk about the ways that they did that tomorrow. And when we talk about Second Temple Judaism, most Jews did not come back. There were exponentially more Jews living around the areas of the Babylonian Empire than the 50,000 who went back to rebuild Jerusalem. And that's understandable. They had homes, they had businesses, they had government careers, they had prospered, and they were continuing to prosper among the Persians. A man like Daniel survived empires and was still in the highest levels of society. The Persians are not the Assyrians, and they're not even the Babylonians. They want good government, and they want prosperity, and so the Jews have done well, and not all of them come back, but about 50,000 of them do. And so Cyrus's decree was issued almost 20 years before this has happened. At this point, 20 years later, the people are living there. They have all the stuff to put in the temple, but they haven't finished building the temple. And so beginning in October 29th, Haggai is delivering them a prophecy telling them to get to it. We'll talk more about this next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.